As the film Ghostbusters Afterlife begins, thunder can be seen in the sky. Egon, who is a Ghostbuster, is driving a car that is moving at a high speed somewhere. He also possesses a ghost capture device, and a ghost was pursuing him. The ghost attacks their car, causing an accident, but Egon is unharmed, and he returns to his home while escaping. He returns to his house, where he has set up a trap to capture the ghost. They set up the trap as soon as the ghost arrives, but it fails to function properly, and Egon enters the house. He pulls out the device that will allow him to locate the ghost. He sits on a chair and hides the ghost capturing device. The scene cuts here as the ghost attacks him from behind. In the following scene, we see Trevor, Phoebe, and their mother Callie. She asks Phoebe what she's doing, and she responds, "I'm just making it fine." The doorbell rings and Callie notices a man outside who gives them a notice. But Callie responds, "My father has died." It was discovered here that Egon was the person who died. He was Callie's father and Phoebe and Trevor's grandfather. Callie accepts the man's attention and travels to her father's old house with her children. The house's condition had deteriorated and there was trash everywhere. They couldn't find the key, so Phoebe opens the door. As they enter, there is a storm, and they hide under a table, but the storm passes. Phoebe notices the ghost capturing device that has fallen there. It has fallen at the same time as the ghost attacked Egon. Phoebe selects the device. Janine arrives, and Callie inquires, "Who are you?" Janine says, "I am your father's friend, and I am saddened to hear about him." Meanwhile, Phoebe is shown in her room, while the chess pieces fall to the ground. Trevor is shown after Phoebe has placed them. He was looking for the signals in his phone at the time. He noticed a car there as well. The next morning, Phoebe notices a chess piece has been moved forward. Someone appears to be playing chess, and Phoebe is also a player. Callie is pictured with Trevor and Phoebe. They were on their way to Phoebe's summer school when Callie dropped Trevor off and took Phoebe to her summer school. Mr. Gruberson was a teacher at this school when Callie met him. They converse for a short time before Callie departs. Mr. Gruberson is shown attending class. He watches a movie on TV, and Phoebe meets Podcast in class. They were conversing and inquiring about one another. There was an earthquake, and Callie is shown buying supplies for renovating the house. Phoebe visits Mr. Gruberson's lab and learns everything there. Then he tells her that because this city isn't on the electronic plates, earthquakes frequently come here. He was explaining the storm to her using a diagram, implying that the storm could be caused by a blast. According to Phoebe, this could be due to a cordless. Trevor is seen working somewhere. He was in the freezer when Lucky appeared and handed him her jacket. Phoebe and Podcast are seen walking home from school. Their conversation was being recorded by Podcast. He asks Phoebe to tell a joke, and when she does, Podcast says it was a good one. The podcast transported her to a location where there was a mining dine many years ago. Phoebe notices huge, terrifying creatures in the area. Trevor is seen taking the blankets out of the car. This car belonged to the Ghostbusters. When Phoebe returned home, the other piece of chess was played. Phoebe also takes her turn, but the opposing side's piece flies through the air and cuts her piece. Meanwhile, the ghost capturing device begins to blink, and Phoebe follows the light to a location where Egon has hidden the device from which the ghost can be captured. She opens the door and discovers the ghost capturing device. Phoebe brings this device to school, and Podcast attempts to open it. Meanwhile, Mr. Gruberson notices the device as he arrives and claims it is a ghost capturing device. Do you not know about it? Mr. Gruberson then shows them a video clip. In the scene where there are a lot of ghosts, the Ghostbusters have to stop them, and one of them is Phoebe's grandfather. They remove the device in order to open it. They connect the device to a car battery, and when Podcast turns on the bus, a magical field appears in that device. Mr. Gruberson activates the device, but there is no movement in it. As Mr. Gruberson touches the device, a ghost appears from it. They were relieved when the ghost left because it was a ghost capturing device. Mr. Gruberson and Podcast arrive at Phoebe's house, where her mother is staying. Podcast pulls out a whistle and blows it. Phoebe's mother requests that he place it. The advertisement begins conversing with Mr. Gruberson. Trevor and Lucky are shown with their friends arriving at the mining site. Trevor and Lucky were sitting on a swing and talking to each other. They were inquiring about one another. Meanwhile, there was a strong earthquake and they were forced to flee. When they see something coming from there, they become terrified. Mr. Gruberson is shown holding a map, and Callie is also present. They were conversing with one another. Phoebe is shown with the ghost capturing device in her hand. She goes to the basement of the house, where she notices a lot of weird things. There was a device that could be used to capture the ghost. The device was in poor condition, so Phoebe attempted to repair it. She enters her room and watches old Ghostbusters videos. In the meantime, Callie arrives and says she has a dinner date with Mr. Gruberson, which he has mentioned in the video. She walks away after saying this. The following day, it is shown that Phoebe and Podcast make the device work properly, and that Podcast activates the device. Phoebe points to something, and when they turn on the device, there is a current that completely destroys the thing. They hear someone's voice from within as they notice a ghost. It was consuming the metal objects. Phoebe attacks the ghost with the device, but the ghost flees. Trevor is shown making the car fine before driving it into the field. He arrives on the road with the car and runs into Phoebe and Podcast. They sit in his car before Callie and Mr. Gruberson have dinner together. Phoebe, Trevor, and Podcast are shown in the city, where they notice a ghost. Phoebe tries to catch it, but the ghost runs away. Phoebe pulls out the device and attacks the ghost while controlling it with the electric current, after which Podcast imprisons it in the device. They were relieved to have captured the ghost. When they were returning home, the police began pursuing them, and they stop after seeing the police car. The police apprehend and imprison them. Trevor also meets Lucky in the jail, and the cop who apprehends them is none other than Lucky's father. Meanwhile, Callie arrives and inquires of the police officer, "Where are my children?" The officer informs her that we have locked them up, but she insists that her children are not criminals and that she should be allowed to leave them now. According to the officer, "Your children were driving the car without a license." He abandons them, and Phoebe attempts to retrieve the replicas, but the officer refuses to return them. So Phoebe becomes enraged and points them at the officer. Phoebe's mother instructs her to return the item and proceed to the car. Callie arrives at home with her children, but Phoebe is upset with her mother. Mr. Gruberson is shown going to the mall to get ice cream for himself, and there are small ghosts that Mr. Gruberson thinks are dolls. The ghost bites his finger as they touch it with theirs. The small ghosts are shown destroying items in the mall. Mr. Gruberson notices a dog eating something as he walks away. When the terror dog spots Mr. Gruberson, he begins chasing him. When Mr. Gruberson arrives at his car, the terror dig attacks him, and the scene cuts. The following scene features Phoebe, Podcast, Trevor, and Lucky. They were seeing a map while sitting at a place. They were wondering where the ghosts were coming from. They leave and arrive at the location where the ghosts were coming from. There was also a massive hole, an earthquake, and a monster emerged from the hole. The replicas that have been placed there activate and attack the ghosts. As a result, the ghosts return to the hole, and the earthquake ceases. Phoebe says, "Our grandfather made all of this, and we have to tell our mother about it." Callie is shown looking for Phoebe and ends up in a basement while looking for her. She discovers all of her photos from childhood to adulthood. Egon, Callie's father, had them placed there while spying on his daughter. Callie realizes how much her father adored her. Meanwhile, Callie is attacked from behind by a ghost. Phoebe, Trevor, Podcast, and Lucky are shown at Phoebe's house, where they notice Phoebe's mother is being terrorized by a terror dog. There was an earthquake, and Mr. Gruberson is shown arriving at the location, where the ghosts attempted to emerge but were stopped by the replicas. Mr. Gruberson turns all of the replicas and destroys them. As a result, all of the ghosts were released, and Callie is seen fleeing while breaking the window. When Phoebe comes out, she notices that many things have been placed there. This, according to Phoebe, is a trap. They go to the basement to fix the problem. They are shown in the police station, where they were there to retrieve their replicas. Phoebe and Podcast receive their replicas, but their hands are unable to reach them. Podcast tries to control the device with the remote, but a ghost appears from the replica and flees, breaking the metal of the jail. They are also on the move with their replica and car. They depart and arrive at the location where the ghosts were appearing. Callie and Gruberson were also present, but they had control of the terror dog. Thunder from the sky falls on them, and they transform into terror dogs. Meanwhile, the most powerful ghost, Gozer, appears among the ghosts. Phoebe steps in front of it to distract it, and Podcast sends them the replicas and turns it on, locking them in replicas and imprisoning the terror dog. Callie was in her normal form when Phoebe left in the car with her mother. Gozer is also pursuing them because its half-body was imprisoned in the replica, and it wishes to reclaim its body. Callie was terrified what was going on. Phoebe tells her everything, and then they are attacked from behind by a terror dog. Phoebe uses the replica to attack the terror dog, and they leave that location to return home. While following them, Gozer arrives at Phoebe's house, and Phoebe has the device in which its half-body is imprisoned. Callie activates the machine, and Lucky emerges to attack Gozer with the replica, but it is so powerful that Trevor also attempts to attack it with the replica. The device does not function properly because there are small ghosts in the car that prevent the device from functioning properly. Lucky's attack had no effect on Gozer, even though it hit Lucky on the ground. It snatches the device from them and extracts its body and terror dog. The terror dog infiltrates Lucky, transforming her into a terror dog. Gozer erupts in rage and attacks them. Meanwhile, Gozer is attacked by the Ghostbusters. The attack has no effect on Gozer, but it scatters the Ghostbusters devices across the land. While Gozer was about to end them by attacking the Ghostbusters, Phoebe attacked Gozer with a replica. Gozer attacks her as well, but it is more dominant on Phoebe. Phoebe was lagging behind, but Egon's soul clings to her and attacks Gozer while assisting Phoebe. The Ghostbusters also rise to attack Gozer. Meanwhile, Gozer is weakening. Trevor activates his device and throws it at the Transformer, which is generating a lot of energy. As a result, the ports of all traps open. The ghosts arrive at a point from which they are unable to return to Earth. They were imprisoned there indefinitely. Later, the Ghostbusters apologize to Egon for not agreeing with him. Phoebe also has her final meeting with her grandfather. Callie embraces her father, and Egon's soul ascends into the heavens. This emotional scene concludes the film.